All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of our Justice and Pieces guest speaker series. Today's guest is RJ Wallia. He is a graduate from Osgoode Hall Law School from 2012, and he had a certification in litigation and dispute resolution and was a winner of the Dean's Gold Key Award. He articled with a well-known litigation boutique in Toronto before joining an in-house legal team of the largest direct home and auto insurer in the country. He went back to BC in 2015 and has worked in-house with a large insurance company and in private practice, and has honed his skills in litigation. And as he alluded to just before, he's working on a preparation for a trial that is starting next week. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule, RJ, and joining us today all the way out in BC. I think the wonders with technology here is that we were actually just talking about time differences. I think Ontario is thinking about or hoping to get rid of the daylight savings time, and a big thing there. But the fact that you can join us from BC at 5 o'clock and it's 8 o'clock here works out perfectly. So thanks again for joining us.
Happy to be here, man. Thanks for asking.
All right, so perhaps, RJ, you can give us a little bit about your background there and expand on, let's say, why you went to law school in the first place, and then the different areas you got into in terms of your career.
Happy to. So, hello, everyone. Good evening. Welcome from the West Coast / Best Coast. To answer your question, I wanted to go to law school. I was lucky in that I realized in grade 12 that I wanted to go to law school, but I didn't realize until about a month into high school, because I thought a month into grade 12, because I was eventually going to be an engineer. And so my sister sat me down and said, listen, do you really want to do this? Because you said when you were younger you wanted to be a lawyer, and I don't know if this is a decision that's going to make you happy or not. So I thought about it and I said, okay, in 10 years, can I see myself as a lawyer? And I immediately imagined myself in court or doing something. I had an idea of what that was. When it came to being an engineer, I had no idea. So I realized that this was something that I hadn't really thought through. And I said, okay, I want to go to law school. So I went and did an undergrad in business because my dad said, look, either you're not going to get into law school, in which case I want you to have a job, or I am, if you ever run your own firm, you should know how to run a business. So I went to community college, a place called Capilano College, which is now a university because they granted a degree. I got into Osgoode, which was awesome and daunting because I had to now zip across the country to Toronto and North York and figure that out. And then I went and met some amazing people. So it was a blast. It was terrifying and it was grueling and exhausting, but I enjoyed it overall, and I enjoyed the people I met.
Now, what was your career after law school like? I certainly highlighted a few places you've worked at, but where is from post Osgoode to sitting here at 8 o'clock talking to us in 2020? What's the 8 years like in your legal career?
Well, to get into that, it kind of gets into a little bit about the tweet that I sent out, which I think culminated in this invitation. So I'm just going to be honest with everyone here, because I typically am. I suffer from depression and anxiety. I take medication, and I have sought treatment in the sense that I saw a psychiatrist and a social worker, but I didn't realize that I had an issue until I finished law school. What happened is I was not good at it seemed like everyone else knew what they had to do and I didn't. So second year OCIs, I didn't get a single interview. So I found my position at a organization doing research through my own, just a career office. And then I go for articling interviews. I don't get the in-firm interviews. I was never a Bay Street candidate. And so I graduate with no articling position. So I didn't have a place to live because my school ended. So I went back to BC. And at that point, I was diagnosed with having symptoms of depression and anxiety. And my doctor's like, look, you're depressed because your life is pretty shitty right now. So it's okay that you're depressed. Let's get you on some meds. Let's see what you can do. And then I made trying to get a job my full-time job. I got up every day, 9 a.m., like had a shower, breakfast, and that was what I did as I applied for work. So in about August of 2012, my friends have already started articling, and a lot of them have already written the barristers and solicitors exams. And I remember going for an interview in Toronto. So I flew for the interview on a Friday, and it was a long weekend. It was like a right beginning of the August long weekend. And they said, okay, can you start Tuesday? So I flew back, packed up some stuff, and then flew back out on the Monday to start my articling position. Now, I'm happily that I had some family in Ontario so that I was able to actually have a place to live for a month. So I started articling at a firm called Kostniak and Greenside, which is in a strip mall in Etobicoke. Still there. They've been around for years. They're an insurance defense firm. So their primary work was representing insurance companies who are, when their policyholders are sued for loss, whether it be a slip and fall, car accident, whatever. So a lot of MVA work, a lot of slip and fall work, just basically personal injury with the occasional property loss thrown in. Article there. And midway through my articles, my dad dies. So that was a bummer, 100%. I fly back, do the funeral, come back home, and I barely make it through my articles. I didn't pass the solicitor's exam. So my firm says, listen, we can't hire you. We need someone right now. We've got someone who can fill your shoes. Thanks. We'll give you a great reference and let's move on. Okay. So then I drive back to BC because I have my car with me and I like road trips. And I'm trying to get an associate position. So once again, same routine. I think about hanging up my own shingle. I pass the solicitor's exam. I'm called to the bar in Ontario. I'm thinking, you know what? I'll get called in BC. I'll start up my own business. Anyway, November, December of 2013, I got hired by TD Insurance to be one of their in-house lawyers. Same personal injury defense. I'm like, great, sign me up. So then I fly back to Toronto, take my car, have it shipped over. And then I worked for 2 years with TD Insurance doing motor vehicle and slip and fall and all insurance defense. 2 years go by, and I had kept in touch with ICBC because I'd interviewed with them, and they're an insurance corporation in British Columbia. They're the motor vehicle auto insurer in British Columbia. They call me 2 years later and go, hey, we really liked you, and we wanted to hire you, but the position had gone away. We have one now. Do you want to move on and come back home? I think about it. I'd missed my family. I was like, okay, I'm going to go back. So then I go back and work for ICBC for 9 months. Why 9 months? I was bored out of my mind. I was like, this is not for me. It's not necessarily it's not the type of work. It was just the files I was getting. They were really junior for what I was doing, and they had me siloed. And I was like, I can't do this. So then I worked for a firm called Stevens Virgin. And then I stayed there for 2 years. Left because the fit wasn't right. It just wasn't the firm for me. So then I moved to another insurance defense firm called, at that time, Stewart & Company, now Armstrong Nash. Still doing insurance defense, but now doing more high-level insurance defense. We're not talking about just whiplash anymore. We're talking about individuals who can never work again. So, millions, multi-million-dollar claims. Okay. Do that for 18 months. Isn't a fit. So now I'm here at Swadden & Company, still doing insurance defense, but also building a commercial litigation practice of starting to take my knowledge from my undergrad, which was business, and starting to try to help people who are having commercial disputes, contractual disputes. Commercial litigation is just a catch-all term for, is there a dispute about a contract or money? And then you just kind of slide yourself in there. And that's where I've been. So if you've been keeping count, I've worked in 2 different provinces. I did my schooling in 2 different provinces. I articled at one firm and been associate at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 firms, whatever. So I've jumped around a lot. And that's where I am now. And I now do trials on my own. I've got a trial starting on Monday. It's a hit and run collision. There's limits issues because of statutory limits. There's issues about liability. There's issues about damages, physical injuries, psychological injuries, whether Buddy's going to work for the rest of his life, has his career ended, things like that. And that's the long answer to my career. That's my CV in a nutshell, man.
Well, thanks for sharing all that, RJ. And I'll get back to that tweet there that I saw, and then we reached out to you because I think it's very important, obviously, because we get a lot of people come in and they share all of their accomplishments, their successes, and you see it on social media. It's very curated, right, about people's posts about what they're highlighting. But I'll get to that in a second. But I would be amiss because you mentioned slip and falls and motor vehicle accidents and insurance defense, and personal injury, and today's actually the first day for these students who are in my tort law class. So I thought maybe we could have a quick question about just tort law in general there as a kind of introduction. So maybe you can explain quickly the negligence aspect there of your claim, of a claim there of litigation for those who have little or zero knowledge of tort law in a nutshell.
For sure. So welcome to tort law. It's not about pies and cakes. I say that because I was really disappointed when I entered law school. But essentially, tort law is the catch-all name for what is the law of... Essentially, tort law is seeking compensation for an individual or a corporation or an entity which owes you a duty of care. So as we exist in the world, so when I started tort law, I had a professor named Alan Hutchinson. So Alan Hutchinson shows up wearing court robes, and he says to you, and I love this story, he goes, "I am an evil deity." And he's got a Manchester accent, so it's like, "I am an evil deity." And I'm like, good grief, man. It's my second day. All right, what are you talking about? And he goes, "I'm going to give you a wager. I'll make a bargain with you." He goes, "I will give you whatever you want. You as a group get to decide whatever you want. I can grant you any wish. 5 of you will die. 5 of you will die. I get to pick. It's random, but you get to have whatever you want. Do you make that gamble?" So we thought about it, we talked about it, and it was a real question about whether we would do it or not. And you know what he said to us? "You do it every day. 5 people die from toasters every year. 5 people die, or people die from refrigerator accidents, vending machines, car accidents, whatever it may be. You have decided as a society that there is a level of risk which you are willing to accept for among people for you to have what you want." Tort law is the law surrounding that, which is that if I interact with the world, do people have duties that they owe me through the common law or through statute? And in the breach of that duty, is there anything that can compensate me for damages? Either make me whole or as close to whole as possible. So that's tort law in a very, very general sense. Now, you're probably going to learn about some case law that arises out of, what creates tort law. And you're going to hear a case called Donahue and Stevens. Now, I see JP smiling here because this is the first case they teach you in law school about torts, and it's the ginger beer case. Donahue decides that she's going to go and have some ginger beer. She has some ginger beer, and there's a snail in it. So something happens to her. I actually don't remember it because it really doesn't matter. Anyway, long story short, something happens to her, and she tries to seek compensation. And so the bar guy is like, "Well, I didn't do anything to you. I just got this beer from this manufacturer. And, that's just how it came. And I'm sorry, but I didn't do anything to you." So Donahue says, "Well, okay, manufacturer, you got this snail in this beer and it affected me. And I want you to make me whole." And so beer companies or ginger beer companies like, "I don't owe you anything. I had a contract with the bartender or the distributor. And that's it. That's my own liability. It's to the contract. It's a contractual dispute between me and him. I don't owe you anything because I don't even know who you are. I didn't tell you to drink my ginger beer. That's your risk." The people who have video on, anyone heard of caveat emptor? I see one nod. Okay, caveat emptor, buyer beware. That's basically saying that you as a consumer have an obligation to ensure that you're making the right bargain when you buy something. And if you don't, that's your fault. So a guy named Lord Atkins Remember Atkins, because he looks at it and goes, okay. He listens to this decision, thinking like he's making a decision. Here's this woman's plight, and he's a very Christian man, very erudite Christian lord. And he says one quote, "Am I not my brother's keeper?" Anyone know where that's from? Story of Cain and Abel. And he says, and from that quote and that decision, all of a sudden a can of worms opens up. Because what it establishes is that there exists between people a duty, a responsibility of care that goes beyond my interactions with one person. And tort law, as it passes from there, is simply trying to figure out how much of a lid do we put back on this axiom? Because that opens up a huge can. Well, who do I owe a duty to? What? Okay. Well, do I owe a duty to? I'm just a guy. I mean, I haven't met all these people. How do I owe these duties to everybody out there? And that is what every tort law case is about. Every seminal tort law decision, when you're establishing duty of care, is about establishing how you have a relationship to other people. So, how do we do that in Canada? Well, there's a series of case law you will learn, which takes you to things like the ANS test, which you're going to learn about, and then the modified ANS test in Cooper and Hobart. And then the most recent iteration of Childs and DeSormo. Why is Childs and DeSormo special to me? It's a car accident case. Childs and DeSormo 2006 Supreme Court of Canada decision was about an individual who left a party. He'd had a few drinks, he was drunk. He hit a car, killed some people, injured others. Now the case was about whether or not there was an obligation on the hosts of that party as to whether or not they owed liability to the deceased and the injured, because they were the ones who hosted the party. And the Supreme Court of Canada had to do, the reason it went up there is because it was about social host responsibility and what's called reasonable proximity. So the Supreme Court of Canada modified the test of how we establish that by saying it's a two-part test. Is there a proximate relationship between two individuals in order to establish a duty of care? And do we want to find, for public policy reasons, that we want to establish a duty of care? That's actually the first part. That's why it's a modification from Cooper and Hobart. Public policy about whether we want to establish a duty of care. The second part of the test is that in establishing that duty of care or approximate relationship, sorry, I misspoke. Is there a public policy reason where we don't want to find a approximate relationship? The second part is that even if you do have a proximate relationship, is there a public policy reason not to have not to apply a duty of care to that proximate relationship? So, do I owe JP a duty of care in my interactions with him? It depends on the interaction. So, what does this mean for car accidents? If JP and I are motorists on the road, I owe a duty of care to him. If I'm a pedestrian, JP owes a duty of care to me. That duty of care could be the reasonable and safe operation of a vehicle, the acknowledgement that I drive with a license, which maintains that I have a minimum knowledge of how to drive safely on the road, that I maintain my vehicle in a good operating condition, etc., etc. If I make a toaster, that it doesn't kill anybody, at least not intentionally, that I make a good product. And all of this stems from common sense things we've grown up with, which is that I am responsible for my actions. And if I live and try to do my best, I generally do okay. But if I do something wrong, I'm not malicious unless you can prove it, but I am negligent. And that is a law of negligence. Tort law deals with the law of negligence. And the reason, and there's something that you'll learn called pure economic loss, which says that if the loss is only money, it's not a tort law. That's typically contractual. But essentially, that is what I do in the insurance realm. So I represent an insurance company which has a bunch of people who they insure. And they've been sued saying that we have breached, our client, the policyholder, has breached their duty of care to this individual. They've fallen apart from the standard of care that's been established, that the damages that they've suffered are reasonably foreseeable to have been caused by the accident. I should have known that this is something that could have occurred based on my negligence. and they're entitled to compensation. And that is tort law in a nutshell. That's motor vehicle law in a nutshell for as far as negligence goes. And then there's other Supreme Court of Canada cases which talks about what standard of proof has to be met. So you know about balance of probabilities and beyond a reasonable doubt, which are civil and criminal, but do you guys know about hypothetical cases? What if your injuries cause somebody to no longer work? What's their loss? Is it their income that they could have gained had they pursued their education or their training, or is it a capital asset? How do you prove a hypothetical? Why is it still about a balance of probabilities? Are you sure? Why? Because they can't prove a future event on that standard. It's just, you don't know what's going to happen. It's hypothetical. So there's a different standard for that. And so, JP, just to be clear, it's a paralegal class, right?
Yes.
Okay. Paralegals, you are the undervalued asset of the legal profession. Your responsibilities are that you will do everything that a lawyer is anticipated to know for a fraction of the cost. Here's where you're worth your weight in gold. You get to know enough to be able to go on your own, do things that a lawyer can do in certain cases, depending on the province you're practicing in, but you have practical knowledge and experience that you bring to the table. But you will need to know as much as a lawyer does when it comes to these issues, because that's how you provide value, both to your clients, to your firm, to whomever. So this is why this is important. People often look down on personal injury lawyers. They say, oh, they're just a bunch of ambulance chasers. Well, there's a reason this profession exists. It's because as life becomes more modern, and as we demand more of things in life, we can have repercussions for those actions. How is tort law going to change for car accidents in the future, for example? Driverless cars. Who do you sue? You sue the manufacturer. Who's manufacturing those cars? You're talking about Tesla. You're talking about Google. Or do you blame the software? Okay, so you got to sue these multinational companies. This is the future of that level of tort law. Privacy breaches. Someone's data gets hacked, and all of a sudden you've lost everything, or your clients lose their life savings. These are the real world applications of Lord Atkin's decision that I am my brother's keeper. So that is just me basically riffing on this stuff. So you got to feed me questions. I don't know where to go from here.
Thank you. That's a very thorough, well said tort law in a nutshell, and it's, I think, very perfect to cover the first day of class here. I think hopefully you got a good overview of what's to come when we get into negligence. So I did want to rewind back to where I reached out for you. I have paralegal students here. They're starting relatively early in their program, and certainly it was made in the context of law students who were looking for their jobs, right? And then they did get successful results, and a lot of them would be discouraged. But maybe perhaps you can kind of explain just generally what you were sharing with my students here, and the importance there that people understand. And you've talked about your career there with a number of different changes, that there is no right path to success in the legal profession. And I think it's important to understand different perspectives. And I think I really want you to share that perspective, stemming from where you kind of bear everything there in that tweet about your experiences throughout law school and throughout your career.
100%. Hey guys, on paper, my path is a path of failure. Technically, I didn't do the OCI route because I couldn't get a job interview. Does that mean I'm a terrible person? No. I mean, it might. I don't think so. I think I'm a pretty decent guy. But what it meant is that look at your competition. Look at who you're dealing with. I can only speak from a law school perspective. I went to one of the top law schools in the country. I didn't do academic writing. My family worked hard. My family is from India. I was born here. The lawyers in my family, I have a grandfather who was a lawyer in India. I don't have any connections in this country. I don't have clout. I don't have prestige. I'm not white. I don't got anything. Okay, cool. So I did a shitty job in my job applications looking back now. Or I didn't. It really doesn't matter. I didn't get the interview. So what should I have done? Well, what I did, what most people do, is I put my head down and basically blamed myself. Okay, cool. Then I blamed the system. Then I blamed everything. I was like, oh my God, it's all rigged. It's not. Look, my family taught me something very important, which is that the world owes you nothing. It owes you nothing, despite everything I said about tort law. The world owes you nothing, right? Duties of care, fine, whatever. The world owes you shit. Okay, so you have to find but you've got to eat. You've got to live. You've got to be passionate about what you do. You got to do what you like. And that means sometimes, okay, I can't get in through the door. I'm going to climb in the window. Okay, I'm going to figure out another way to get where I'm going. Remember I was interviewing for a firm. And when I say interview, I mean I called them and I said, look, I'd like a job. They go, we don't have one. I'm like, great. Can I get 15 minutes of your time to change your mind? The guy's like, okay, come on down. Remember his name is Richard Bell. So he shows me around his office, gives me an hour of his time. He's a very generous man. And I went to Richard. I said, tell you what, I'll work for free for a month. That's my job interview. If you like me, great, hire me. If you don't like me, I got a basically a month's worth of work experience in a law firm. Okay, I had the ability to do that because I had family support. Not everyone has that. He said no because he said I know I'm going to hire you if I wanted to do that. So I'm not going to do it because I can't afford you. Okay, fair. Move on. Then I just kept applying. I kept pushing. I didn't take no for an answer right away. I minded the value of people's time, but I wouldn't just simply take the first no. Okay, no one will advocate for you better than you. 100%. You are your only real advocate because you know you the best. You know your worth, but you also have to be ready to know what you're willing to sacrifice. You are students right now. You will eventually become licensed. That comes with responsibility. What you will have to do is ensure that you do your job to the best of your ability. Network, put yourself out there. Be ready to take failure and be ready not to take it personally. Now, that doesn't mean don't listen to criticism, but if the criticism is you suck, you can ignore it. Always. If the criticism is you are not presenting yourself correctly to convince me to pay you money, listen to it. Listen to that advice. This is a market system. This is a job. This is a business. The client is your boss. Give them what they want. Now, some of you will have to decide whether the price is too high. And I'm not saying that all prices are valuable or worth it. If a boss says, I want you to pick up my dry cleaning, decide if that's something you're willing to sacrifice. I wouldn't. Right? But do I have to swallow my pride sometimes? Well, I'll tell you, when I was articling, they were paying me $500 a week while they were getting their brand new Aston Martins pulled in. Sorry, no, it was a used Aston Martin. Meanwhile, I was eating peppers, pork chops, and leeks every night because I couldn't afford anymore. 10 months of my life, that's all I said. This is my time. Okay? This is it. Get an associate position. Okay, now I'm making 85 grand. 50 grand pay jump. Oh, wait, I owe $130,000 in law school debt. Okay, gotta work. Make the sacrifice. Push yourself. You gotta do it. Think of the long game. Now, touch wood, I'm in a place where I own a home with my family and, I don't have to worry about food over my head, but it could have gone another way. The challenge that you will have to face as individuals is there are people in life who think they hit a triple, but they've always been on third base. They started there. They're the ones who will give you advice. Don't always listen to it. I got a question here I see from somebody. online barriers we have, or who do you think is a better opportunity for paralegals? Or do you think I didn't show up to a firm unless I was invited? I called everybody. And the reason I called everybody is because they were my dad's and mom's generation of people who made the decisions. They were old school. You know how easy it is to ignore an email? Pick up the phone. Now, what do we do with COVID? You email, you ask to speak to the right person, right? You do the Zoom meeting. If they can't do the Zoom meeting, you pick up the phone. You have a phone call and say, hey, I'd love to meet with you. Okay, well, I can do Zoom meeting. Great. 15 minutes is all I need. And stick to it. Watch the clock. Value their time. Show that you're interested. Do research about them. My one articling job that I really wanted was a criminal law firm. And do you know why I got the interview? Because I called her and I said, you argued R.N. Sinclair. And I really appreciated your fight in that. And she's like, well, what do you know about it? And I recited the decision and why I agreed with her. And she said, okay, you can get the job. You can get an interview. Do you know why I didn't get the job? I didn't say goodbye to the receptionist. Now, the receptionist was on the phone, but the lawyer said, we're a family here. That was a sign of ego that I don't like, and you're not getting the job. Oh, God, I was pissed. But I learned something that day. And every job interview since, I always say goodbye to the receptionist, whether anyone sees or not. That lawyer, by the way, is one of my good friends. I've done panels with her now about trial stress. And she came up to me years later and said, that was the biggest decision I regret, not hiring you. And I said, that's okay. Now, keep in mind, had she hired me, I would have been there when my dad died properly. I would have been with him in his last months. That was hurtful. But she didn't know that because it wasn't reasonably foreseeable that my dad was going to die during articling. So I don't hold it to her because she didn't owe me a duty of care to give me a job. What she gave me was an opportunity, and I failed. And I failed for nothing about my education, my background, or anything. I failed because I didn't show her that I cared. That's life. It's not always fair. But you don't know where you're going to end up. All you can do is your best. Always give your 100% best. Turn your heads to files. Don't be distracted when you're working on something. Give them everything. Approach this with everything that you have. And if you can't because something is more important, good. Because that better be very important. Like your family, like your health, like your friends. But sometimes you have to look at this and go, this is what I have to do. I'm not meeting you out for drinks. I have to get this done. You know, my mentor here, he's a guy named Craig Watson. He missed his first wedding anniversary for a trial because that was his job. Prudent or good decision or not will be ultimately your decision, but that was his decision to make. My thing, I got a girlfriend who really doesn't see me that much. She's upset. She's like, we don't get to hang out as much. I said, you know what I am. You know the type of person I am. And personal sacrifice is a part of the law. Always. We are advocates. You will be an advocate for your client. Full stop. Anyone know who the first lawyer really in Western society was? Or where they came from? Rome. The role of it was called rhetoric. It was people standing in the Roman Senate on the floor and saying, I will speak for this man. It's usually men. And it was, I will speak for them. I will use my talent of logical thinking and oration and speak for this individual because that is what I do. We are our client's voice. That is we as legal professionals are what provide access to justice. Not the courts, not the open principle. We are the gatekeepers. Now, issues about being able to pay, access, making things more complicated, all valid. But that's on us. How we choose to behave in this profession will ultimately dictate whether or not people get what they deserve, children get to see their parents, criminals going to jail, corporations making their bargains. It's all the law. That's us. Some of you will say, I don't want to sign up for that. I can't defend this person. I can't represent this person. That's fair. You have to make that choice. But make that choice knowing that the system is designed that all people before it are equal. And if they're not equal, you've got to point that out. Decide. This may not be the profession for you. Save your money, save your time. But if you do it with everything you've got. That's my only piece of advice.
Perfect. So thank you so much, RJ, for taking the time and joining us. I was going to ask you if you have any other words of wisdom, but if you do want to expand on that, feel free to. But wish you all the best there in your trial, and thanks again for taking the time and joining us.
Well, you know what? I can give another 5 minutes if you want. Does anyone have any questions? Like, I saw a few people messaging in the chat, and I've been keeping an eye on it, but I'd be happy to answer any questions specifically anybody has.
All right, so if anyone has any questions, you can either unmute and ask, or you can pop it in the chat and I can, or RJ could just take a look at it there.
Madhuri, my name is RJ, not Mr. Wallia. He passed. I haven't been that pretentious in a while, like an hour, I mean.
There's nothing coming in here. Maybe you could share any other words of wisdom with my students who are in sort of the transition period now from school and hoping to get sort of the equivalent we have for articling their internship a lot shorter, and then from there passing their licensing exams and getting into the profession. So maybe if you have any other pieces of advice there or words of wisdom to share, perhaps that'd be a good way to wrap things up.
Lawyers are weird. I really need to emphasize that. Lawyers are weird. I've always said there's something neurotic about us. There's something kind of off. You know, for me, I think you're going to meet lawyers of all stripes. If they're sole practitioners, it's generally, and they're older, it's generally because they didn't really know how to play well with others, or they didn't need to play well with others. So they can be curmudgeonly. But other than that, we all have our idiosyncrasies. The only obligations in the workplace that people really have are to be polite to you. They don't need to be your friend. You don't need to be liked. But if you have the opportunity to find a place where you gel with everybody, I would do that. If you're going for job interviews, ask for a tour of the office. Twofold for that reason. One, if they already like you, they'll probably tell you where you'd be working. So they'd be like, okay, well, this is if you got the job and when it all works out, this is where we'd have you. That's a really good sign in my experience. The other thing is look at the people. They smiling? Are they unhappy? Somebody crying? You know, just you kind of want to worry about that, right? If everyone looks miserable, guess what? You're going to be miserable too. If anyone, I mean, ultimately don't always ask about pay. Pay is relative. I'll give you an example. I need parking, gym access, other perks. Figure out the whole package and don't be afraid to negotiate as you get into your career. And be upfront. You know, when they say they're talking about fit, what they want to know is, are you a real piece of shit to work with? You have to figure the same thing. Right? I am at my firm right now when I say fit because I like almost everyone here. Actually, I like everyone here. There's really nobody I don't like. And I work 8 to 12 hours a day here. So anywhere from a third to half my day is spent with these people. I need to know if I can hang out with them or at least like them. Do the same. And you're not going to know everything. You're not going to know everything. You have to be ready to accept that you will not know everything. And you're not going to get it right the first time. Make a mistake, learn from it, and never make it again. And as for case law, I don't care about citations. I never met anyone who does, maybe the Court of Appeal. But if you're going to do it right. It's the same thing. Listen to JP. JP's the man. But one thing you also should know is that when you're doing your assignments, JP's the client. Give him what he wants. If you don't give him what he wants, he's not going to give you the grade you want. If you're satisfied with whatever grade you want, you give him the level of effort then. If you just want to pass, great. Other than that, you're going to be fine. This profession changes all the time. It's always doom and gloom. Just do your best. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. It doesn't mean that you're a terrible person or that you failed. It just means that it didn't work out. Life's too short to worry about these things. Just give it your 100% best.
Perfect. Thank you so much, RJ, and wish you all the best on your trial next week, and all the work to come there. And thank you so much for all of that. Very detailed overview of tort law, and then certainly for bearing kind of your honesty about your experiences there. I think it's always refreshing to get a kind of a different perspective with respect to how you've thrived here in the profession and getting to that point. It's not just I woke up this day and I'm the senior partner at a law firm. It doesn't just happen, and there's a path, and then sort of I like a quote where you got to get knocked down before you pick yourself back up off the canvas, right? So I think it's very important you shared that, and again, if anyone wants to connect with you, feel free to on LinkedIn or however else to reach out to RJ.
100%. I'm on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn, so you can reach me there. You are 100% correct, man. You've got to pick yourself back up. You've always got to pick yourself back up. No one else is going to do it for you. But if you can be happy to find someone who does that, treat them like gold. Because really no one owes you anything except potentially a duty of care and the standard. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that.
Take care, RJ.
Take care, man. Good luck to everybody and take care.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks, RJ. Have a great night.
You too. Take care, everybody.